Hey everyone, and welcome. So let's just jump right in. We all tend to think of negotiation as this battle of wits, right? A kind of verbal chess match where the whole point is to win the argument. But what if I told you there's a much deeper, way more powerful idea? We're talking about mastering the entire situation before you even think about sitting down at the table.
I mean, just let that sink in for a second. What if you could shape the game so completely that the outcome you want becomes, well, the only logical conclusion? And look, this isn't about having a few clever tricks up your sleeve. No, this is about a fundamental, deep shift in how you approach strategy itself. And you know, this brilliant quote from the strategist Sang Yemen, it just nails it. He says a lot of people can talk, but very few can actually set the outcome. He calls it 定局. See, the truly powerful people, they don't just win a negotiation, they master the entire direction of the situation. That, right there, is the difference between playing the game and writing the rules. So what is this idea of Dingdu, really? Well, think of it like this. It's the art of creating a strategic layout. It's about shaping the whole environment, the momentum, everything, so that events just naturally flow towards your goal. It's about setting up the dominoes so they can only fall one way. You're basically making your success a foregone conclusion. Okay, so how do we actually do this? To really get it, we need to start peeling back the layers of strategy, almost like an onion. And we're going to start with the first, most tactical layer, a 5-step process for controlling a negotiation. You can think of this as the foundation, the ground floor for everything else we're about to build. And these steps, they're super practical. I mean, first up, you've got to ask, is this fight even worth my time? Then, you gotta look past the demands and really understand the person you're dealing with. After that, you set your bottom line, your non-negotiables. Then, and this is key, you guide the situation. You don't just try to bulldoze your way through it. And finally, you always have a plan B, C, and D. Now, this is all solid stuff, for sure. But, and this is a big but, it's only the beginning. All right, now we're gonna peel back that next layer of the onion. Let's go deeper, because true mastery, it isn't just about following a checklist. It's about the character of the person running the strategy. Specifically, it's about this incredible power you get from having principles that are both rock solid and, at the same time, flexible. And to really wrap our heads around this, let's use a simple but honestly a really powerful analogy. I call it the swimming promise fallacy. And this thing, it perfectly exposes a huge mistake, a trap that so many of us fall into, where we confuse the method with the actual goal. So here's the scenario. It's pretty simple. The goal, have a fun day swimming with your son. The rule you made, you promised you'd go on Sunday, and you're a person who keeps their promises. But then, reality hits. Your son wakes up with a really high fever, like 40 degrees Celsius. So what do, right? Do you rigidly stick to the rule? Do you say, hey, a promise is a promise, and drag your sick kid to the swimming pool? Of course not. Or do you adapt? Do you recognize that the rule, the promise, was only ever meant to serve the goal, which was a fun day? Forcing it now would actually hurt the very person you were trying to make happy. You know, this idea isn't new at all. We're talking ancient wisdom here. The philosopher Mencius basically said that for a truly great person, your ultimate guide isn't some rigid promise or a guaranteed result. No, it's righteousness, a higher principle. And here's the kicker. Sometimes, to uphold that higher purpose, you actually have to break a smaller rule. And it's this very idea of a higher purpose that brings us to the final, most powerful layer of strategy. This is the core of the onion, right? The master's view. This is where you stop just playing the game, and you start to fundamentally change the game itself. And I love this slide because the contrast is so clear. On one hand, you've got the conventional negotiator. Let's call them the legalist. They sit at the table. They argue. They persuade. They play the hand they were dealt. But the master? The master works in the layout. They aren't arguing about the rules on the table. They're busy reshaping the entire structure of the game board. How do they do this? They understand a concept called she. And she is, well, think of it as the invisible currents in any situation. It's the momentum, the potential energy, the whole strategic landscape. A master strategist doesn't waste energy swimming against this current. No way. They ride it, they redirect it, they leverage its immense power. Okay, so I know what you're thinking. This all sounds great in theory, but what does it look like in the real world? Well, let's put this whole framework to the test. Let's apply it to a really high-stakes geopolitical scenario, a hypothetical crisis in the Strait of Hormuz. All right, so here's the setup. A conflict breaks out in the Middle East. The Strait of Hormuz, a critical shipping lane, gets disrupted. The U.S. imposes a military blockade on Iranian ports. And in response to all this chaos, Singapore, which is a massive global shipping hub, comes out and publicly insists on its legal rights of passage under international maritime law. So their public stance is totally firm, it's categorical, and it's based entirely on the established rules. They're essentially saying transit is a right, not a privilege. We will not negotiate. Now, does that sound familiar? That is a classic at-the-table strategy. You're arguing the law. But the question is it the wisest move? And this is where it all comes together. This table just perfectly illustrates the strategic flaw. If you look at that rigid approach, it makes a huge mistake. It assumes peacetime rules apply in a full-blown crisis. It's totally ignoring the sheet, the reality of the situation, and it's confusing the method, the UN closed treaty, with the real goal, the doubt, which is protecting its ships and economy. A master's view, on the other hand, recognizes the situation has changed. The goal is safe passage, so the strategy, the shoe, has to be flexible enough to actually achieve that goal. Think about it. Expecting a nation that is literally fighting for its survival to just neatly obey a peacetime treaty, that is exactly the same as dragging a kid with a 40-degree fever to the swimming pool just to keep a promise. You get so fixated on the rule that you end up actively harming the very thing, or in this case, the very people you're supposed to be protecting. And at the end of the day, it all comes back to this. All the strategy in the world, all the clever plans, they come down to the person executing them. The ability to reshape the entire layout isn't really born from cleverness. It's born from stability. It's the person who can stand firm on their true purpose, the one who isn't swayed by fear or pressure. That's the person who gains the clarity to see the whole board and actually change the game, instead of just reacting to the other person's moves. So that leaves us with one final thought, a question for you. The next time you're in a high-stakes situation, what are you going to do? Are you going to be the one arguing at the table, just playing the game as it's presented to you? Or are you going to be the one with the vision and the stability to step back, to understand the she, and to reshape the entire layout to make your success inevitable?